Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have the next tank video for you in the American line, just the Tier 9, the T54E1 autoloader. And as always, we have a complete guide for you, complete with tech spec, some gameplay, and we're going to have a mini tutorial on autoloaders. Now, as always, we're going to have a look at the tech spec. First, we're going to use blitzhanger.com. Now, this tank, in my opinion, is a step up from the T69 to Tier 8. I think it's a better tank. It doesn't struggle quite so much when it's up tiered. And, you know, it's classified as a medium tank, but in actuality, while it's a good tank, it's not really a standard medium tank. Because it doesn't really play like a medium. It's more like a mobile gun platform. But anyway, we'll have a look at that during the gameplay. So I would run Coca-Cola on this because the view range goes up to 296.3, and it also helps with the reload on the magazine. There are two gun options. 90mm as with the T69 Top Gun, and 105mm, which is Top Gun on this, and you really need 105mm because you're up against some big heavies in Tier 9 and Tier 10 if you're up tiered, and therefore you need that extra pen. Now, you get 15.4 second magazine reload if you run calibrated shells, 15 without it. 2.5 seconds between each shell in the magazine. 242mm of pen with AP, 284 with APCR, which is your promo, and there's no HE in the Top Gun. You've only got two round types. You've got AP and APCR, so just be aware of that. Muzzle velocity is 1067 meters per second, goes up to 1387 meters per second with supercharge. With APCR with supercharge, it's 1734 meters per second, which is very good. It's much faster. So just be aware of that when you're cycling through different shell types. I would run vertical stabilizer because the tank is mobile and there you will fire when moving. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, 13 degrees of elevation, so it has decent gun alignment, but not as good as the T69 before it. But nonetheless, the gun alignment is good. Gun alignment, of course, means the ability, the ease with which you can align your gun, your turret with the enemy. Now, it's fast as 43.5 kilometers per hour and 20 in reverse, although it is less agile than the Tier 8 T69 before it. And of course, as with many American tanks, particularly mediums and lights, it has a poor power to weight ratio, and it's very typical of the American line. What does that mean? Well, it means while the tank has good top speed, it has poor acceleration, particularly from a stop-start. So therefore, if you're in a sticky situation, you need to get out of it. This tank is not great. It has a very slow acceleration. It also has poor concealment. So a tank with a 360 meter view range, of which there are many in the lights and mediums of Tier 9, will spot you within 254 meters. And if you fire, he'll spot you within 291 meters, which is not very good at all. So basically you'll be spotted early and often, so be aware of that. Use soft cover and try to stay a little bit behind your outliers, your light and medium tanks with better view range and concealment than you. Now, looking at the armor profile here, we're looking at the gun alignment. As you can see, it's pretty decent. You can see though that more or less the tank is quite yellow. On side scraping angles, you can create acute angles and high relative armor numbers. As you can see on the top left hand corner when we look at the relative armor numbers. You also have this unique turret that has some very specific angles on the armor where the armor plates meet, and that can bounce some shots. So you will bounce shots off the turret as you did with the T69 beforehand, but you can see the back of the turret's very vulnerable. The ass of the tank is extremely vulnerable. Think of Ryan Gosling or Bradley Cooper in a maximum security prison in the US. That ass is vulnerable and will be tapped. If a Death Star, a Waffle Tractor, a Grill or something spots your ass out in the open, he will drop a HE round into you and can roll you for 1,000+ damage. You have virtually no ass protection. Think of Tim Robbins when he's with the mop and broom in Shawshank Redemption. So be aware of that. Don't go out into the open if you don't know where those big guns are, because you're very vulnerable at the back and on the ass. Now, you can see here the arm profile when you're top tier is pretty good front on, and we see again those acute angles that unique turret with those armor plates welded together creates. However, when you're against a tier 9 or against a tier 10, particularly one of the big guns, you will be penned front on quite easily, so you need to be aware of that. You don't have too much armor. What you do have though is that turret, and you have that gun depression of 8 degrees. Not the best in the American line, but nonetheless it's decent, so you can use that for going hull down, especially if you're top tier. Now, in terms of tactics for this tank, you need to play it as an autoloader, not as a medium tank. What does that mean? Well, autoloaders have different game characteristics, have a different game style. Even if they're categorized as medium tank, you can't play them as a standard medium tank. I will discuss that briefly when we look at the autoloader mini tutorial, which is just coming up right now after the tech spec. So let's take a quick timeout and let's have a look at this mini tutorial for autoloaders. Now, I do realize that if you've watched the T69, T71 videos before, I've already shown you this, but of course I need these videos to be standalone because not everybody goes through the complete line on channel. Some people just drop in and pick a particular video. So if you've seen this before, please bear with me or skip by it. Don't mean to bore you, of course. But if you're just here for this tank, I think you might find this tutorial useful. So it's a mini tutorial going to give you the essentials that you need to know when playing an autoloader. Now, this line here represents how a normal tank with a normal firing system engages the enemy. It's linear, it's consistent throughout the game because you've got a set amount of time between the shells that you fire. So let's say it's a T54 or something like that, you've got a just over 6-second reload between your shells. That is consistent throughout the game, so therefore you can engage the enemy in a consistent or linear manner. Okay, pretty simple. However, when you've got an autoloader, that is not the case. You engage the enemy in cycles like this. You have periods of decreased activity and periods of increased activity. Decreased activity, of course, you can do things, you can move around the map, you can spot the enemy, you can capture bases, but you can't engage the enemy, you can't create damage. You have increased periods of activity when you have a full magazine loaded and you can actually engage the enemy, and you can do significantly more damage, because there's only 2.5-second reload between shells, than a normal tank can. So therefore you engage in a cyclical manner. You have periods of increased activity and periods of decreased activity, and you need to manage those cycles. For example, when you're in a decreased activity, when you're reloading your magazine, you can capture bases, move around the map, try to spot, move to a position where you can engage the enemy. When you have those increased periods, and you should try to make those as frequent as possible by having a full magazine loaded as frequently as possible, you need to make that count. And you do that through inflicting burst damage, which is basically entire damage created by the magazine unloaded into the enemy. And the burst damage on this tank is significant. It's 1200 plus, and with HE it can be 1600 plus. It's significant. It's nearly all the hit points of a tier 8 or tier 9 tank. So playing autoloaders, here's a summary. Count your shells. Always know how many shells are in the magazine. This is key. Stay safe while you reload. This is a mistake that many players make. They stay out in the open when they're reloading. They can't fire back if you're just getting hit. Stay safe, be in cover. Use your inactive time, that's when you're reloading, to do things which help your team, spot or base capture or move in the map from one firing position to another. Remember to keep your shell icon open. This is again a mistake that many players make. They don't leave it open. Why is that important? Because you can double tap on to reload. You tap on the open shell icon and you automatically reload. So you see many amateur players with auto reloaders who haven't played them before. They've got one shell left in the magazine and they fire it to get a reload. That's not what you do. You tap on the shell icon and it reloads automatically, which means you don't need to fire, which means you don't need to waste a round or credits, and it means you don't have to break camo and give away your position. And you should reload as often as you can to maximize your burst damage. So what does that mean? Even if you've only fired off one shell and you're going to capture a base, you're going to be inactive for 20 minutes. That means you're not firing at the enemy for 20 seconds. Not minutes, sorry, seconds. Tap on the shell icon and get a full magazine reloaded. That means then that when you go out to the enemy, you can engage them and do your maximum burst damage. Because the whole idea of this tank is to have a full magazine loaded as often as possible throughout the game, so you can engage the enemy with those maximum amount of activity, of increased activity, and a maximum amount of burst damage. So manage those shell cycles. Okay, so we're going to have some gameplay. It is Dead Row. This is going to be a mastery game. As you can see, I have my Clan Warrior camo on, Go 7 Ghost Division. And as I said, it's going to be a mastery game. And actually, we're up tiered in this game. There's a few tier 10s in it. So you'll see that this tank, as I said, is better than the T69. And that the T69, in my opinion, struggles quite a lot with its 90mm gun when it's up tiered. This tank, because it has a 105mm gun, doesn't struggle quite so much. It's much better when it's up tiered. That's why I think it is probably a better tank than the T69. Ceteris paribus, all things being equal, to use a Latin phrase. Now, you can see here I'm using the gun depression. I'm just popping my really strong turret with those angles over to see what's up. I'm going to let my tier 10 medium see if he can spot up what's over. They haven't come to engage us, which is good. That's a mistake from them, because that gives us a nice easy capture on C. You can see what I mean about the muzzle velocity there, the AP over long distances. It is a bit, it's a bit splashy. It's not so reliable, because the muzzle velocity for tier 9 is quite low. You know, your average muzzle velocity in tier 9 is around 1600 meters per second, so you're significantly below that. And that, of course, impacts your gun handling. The higher the muzzle velocity, the better the gun handling, and of course higher the likelihood that you will penetrate, because muzzle velocity is a key factor in the formula for armor penetration, and it's actually squared. Now here you are, you saw that I hit the shell icon, so that I got a maximum amount of I was able to have my full magazine loaded, able to do my maximum amount of burst damage, and then I do the same again. I've got one shell left in the pipe, but I actually go to, I know I'm moving, I'm changing position, I'm going to have a bit of downtime, so I use that to reload a full magazine, and you see the benefit of that. Bam, bam. I track him, keep him in position, allow my allies to put around him, take him out. That's good team play, and also it's sort of thinking play. Rather than just putting around to the side of him, I track him, bam, hold him in position, allows one of my allies to put a round into him, and then my second round takes him out. That is good team play. That's sort of thinking blitz. And of course, you know, as Robert De Niro says in Ronin, you know, when Sean Bean says to me, "You think too much," he says, "Well, nobody ever accused me of that before." There's no such thing as thinking too much, right? Now here we are, the lessons from the tutorial. Keep out of trouble while reloading. So many players who are not familiar or new to autoloaders would pop out there, they're looking around, they're going backwards and forwards, but they're not, it's pointless because they're not able to do anything, right? Princess Charlotte be a fucking hell. Let's not worry about that. Let's not worry about Princess Charlotte. I'm sure she's going to do great in school. See again there, nice bounce off the turret, huge roll there, huge bounce, 640 bounce. We're in a 3v3 situation here. What you don't want to do in a tank is go front on to a Yagaru. That is not a good thing to do, and that will mess up anybody's day. So, you know, caution is the better part of valor. You hear people talking about cowardice and stuff like that in Blitz, which is complete nonsense. You can't be a coward in a pixelated tank game. But what you can be is sensible, right? So don't go front on to a Jagdpanzer. Like, this is how you want to engage Jagdpanzer E100 from the rear. Much like Bradley Cooper or Ryan Gosling in a maximum security prison, you want to engage them from the rear. So we clear off that the Yagaru, and now we're back in business. We have a 2v1 situation. We're ahead on bases, ahead on points, exactly where you want to be. We've conserved our hit points. We still have about 85% to 80% of our hit points, and we're going up against a same tier tank with much less hit points, and we are good to go. We get a bounce again off that turret, exactly as we discussed when we looked at it in the tech spec. put one into the vulnerable part of the turret, and we clear off. And that's 5 kills for us, plus a whole load of additional XP for helping the team. Almost 5k damage, which is pretty good at tier 9. Myself and the FE had a good game, bit of a carry from us. You can see that we have spotted or damaged up nearly every enemy tank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that we have contributed some way towards damaging, either through damage directly spotting or helping our allies damage. And a shit ton of medals there: Mastery Badge, Top Gun, High Caliber, which is always great to get. Radley Walters medal for the 5 kills. And what was the last medal? Oh, that medal there. So that one. So the unpronounceable medal from the Finnish guy for destroying the tanks of a higher tier and a medium tank. So again, a very good example of how to play this tank. Utilizing the power of the burst damage, managing the shell cycles really well, managing the magazine cycles, staying out of trouble when you're not in one of those higher cycles, when you have a period of higher activity within the game. So let's have a recap. This is a good tank. It's great practice, by the way, for the T57 tier 10 because they're very, very similar. 105mm gun is important to get, and 90mm gun is too light for tier 9, tier 10 play, I think. The SAS have a saying: train hard, fight easy, or train easy, fight hard. So, you know, think about how to play your autoloader. Practice with that, and you will have a much better time playing this tank, and you'll be much more successful. Be aware of the magazine reload. It's 14.4 seconds, 2.5 seconds between shells. It has a poor power to weight ratio, so be aware of that. It's like many US light and medium tanks. But the traverse is good, which makes it a good brawler. But of course, count your shells before you get into a brawl. Don't get into a brawl when you've got 1 shell in the magazine. Again, it's all about magazine and shell management. Good alignment is okay. It's not as good as a T69, but it's decent. Turret armor is good, plus it has all those strange angles that get you bounces. And this and the gun depression can be very useful for going hull down. But the key thing about playing an autoloader is shell management. Keep your selector open, cycle your shells based on the target, and manage those shell cycles. Have your maximum amount of shells loaded as often as possible to maximize your burst damage multiplier. That is 3 times your burst damage as many times by N as possible within the game. So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. And I guess now all that remains for me to say is pants off.